Hey, I'm Brando.
And I'm Owen.
And we're the hosts of Banter and Such.
Each week we get together with the most interesting people that we know and talk about the things that we're generally interested in.
Like movies.
TV shows.
Movies.
Nostalgic childhood franchises.
Movies.
Urban legends.
And sometimes movies.
So check out Banter and Such anywhere you get podcasts.
Banter, ampersand, such.
Or banter and then the word and then such.
Or just banter and it fills in the rest automatically for you and you just click on it.
Either way, it's called Banter and Such.
Want to get into some BS with us?
Hey everybody, welcome to Tabletop. It's me, Franco. Nick is out right now. We're doing an episode on hit points, and because Nick is very bad at math, he is taking a remedial math course right now to catch up to us.
Yeah, it was weird when the school bus came up and just like drug him off. Like, did you have to sign up for that, or is it just something that happens to you if you fail math in life a lot?
I think he was like getting some hit points knocked off, and he like couldn't calculate it fast enough, and so the GM just sent him to school.
No, that will happen. Shade, were you GMing him at the time? It sounds like something you would do.
It does sound like this.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that math is a valuable skill, but I'm not really sure if I have the power necessary to be the GM of life.
Clearly, you did.
This has really been a great intro, and we're awesome at this. So
yeah, we don't need Nick.
No, we don't need Nick at all. Yeah. So what are
Nick,
we talking about today?
We miss you and we love you.
We're doing HP, which some people call health points. Those people are wrong.
Oh my god!
It is hip protection. We're talking about hip protection right now. Yeah, this is going to be a problem.
Hit points, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I guess it's hit points. Yeah, this is going to be bad because Nick really has like even opinions, and I'm the one with the strong opinions. So I'm the host, and it's me, and I'm right. What are hit points, Daniel? You first.
All right, hit points are what you have to survive with in any sort of adventuring fantasy game. Generally, they're a number. Bigger the number, the hardier you are. And they can take a lot of different forms in different styles of games. Shade, you look like you had something you wanted to say.
No, I just always look like that. But saying that, I will put in like, I mean, hit points are they are integral to TTRPGs. Honestly, if you've ever played any game where you have an avatar of some sort, chances are there are probably some abstraction of hit points there, and they have their roots actually in TTRPG play with none other than D&D co-creator Dave Arneson, who essentially was running a war game, and his players were like, oh cool, I got hit once and now my character is dead, and they didn't like that, so he came up with hit points as a concept, and they have endured to this day.
Man, the 70s really gave us a lot of treasures to take with us as we go around this wild star called the sun.
And a lot of things to leave behind.
Hey, so this might be too late, but did we actually introduce ourselves? I know Franco did.
No, we sure didn't.
Well, Shade,
hi, I'm Daniel. I'm also here.
Well, Shade, we said Shade's name, and then I realized that we didn't say Daniel's name.
That's the same thing. Like I said Shade, and I was like, oh, well, Franco's been named, Shade's been named. No one's called me out by name.
That's why you didn't realize.
I'm a voice.
That's because everyone knew who you were.
No, that's fair. I'm a star. No.
Yeah, we're only 4 minutes in if we want to go again.
No, this is where the introduction should happen, the 4 minute mark.
Okay,
this is the real energy.
All right, we're doing great. Nick, we miss you. So yeah, hit points, like I said, they're integral to TTRPGs by and large, although, you know, there are some that don't use them. So for hit points for you guys, like, do you like hit points? I know that
I love hit points.
Yeah.
Hit points are
but
very
I'm
interesting.
a combat guy. I like fighting big monsters and winning. I think the two of you are more like strategy oriented and goals shifting, but no, yeah. I use hit points in pretty much every game that I play. But when I'm running a game, I use a vague notation of hit points because I think everyone does when you have the big monster.
Well, when
Right.
you're, I guess, should we talk about? So it sounds like right now you're talking about from the GM perspective. So
Yeah.
let's do it that way, because I think
Yeah.
I was thinking about hit points because as we started talking about it as like the player character perspective, but like like abstracting hit points for monsters is also something I do. I use a system of tally marks, and since like monsters have variable hit points, every tally mark means 10 hit points, and if they do I just round up. If they do 5 or more, I knock off a tally mark, and then if they do 5 or less, I don't, and then that's just how it goes.
So sometimes I use hit points to actually mean the number of times a monster's been hit.
Oh,
And I was like, how many people are in the party? 5. I want this to be a 4-round thing, so he needs 20 hits before he'll actually go down. So obviously, misses happen, but also some people have extra attack and second wins, action surges. So
I guess that kind of brings. I mean, we're talking about this from a vantage of DMs, but in general, do you see hit points as an actual representation of like true damage being done every time, or is that like
I do want to come at Daniel really hard first about this concept.
All right. Hold on, let me brace. All right,
let's start attacking. Let's put the
Where
HP
did you get a knife, Franco?
On the board. I got this knife here.
Wait, how many hit points do I have right now?
If I'm the GM, you've got 200.
Nice.
Wow, come on. I have dice right next to me.
You have a knife. He has to have more hit points.
I was gonna say I do like to still give the enemies the hit points, because more recently I have been not thinking about the encounters in terms of like I want to see them fight. It's like the monster is there and they have to interact with it in whatever way they want, right? Like I had a venom troll in the last little adventure I ran, and which is a great monster, because every time it hits, it does splash damage off of it, and it was hilarious.
And I think when it gets hit too,
every time it gets hit, it'll do that, and that like it got to a certain point, the monster started running away. I guess like I don't think of that. I don't think about like how long do I want this combat to take. I just think about like this is the monster, and it has its own like motivations and wants and stuff, and isn't there to do.
Think there's an ephemeral nature to a creature's life expectancies.
I don't know about that. I just think it's well, that's what you're doing, I guess, right? Because it's like, right or no? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm not. No, I'm trying to say you did it.
No, because it's like
I want to keep combat interesting. I like a big boss fight. I like smashing monsters. So, but also hit points are kind of weird.
Monsters.
Because Jesus Christ, this is a PG rated podcast. Where was my thought? Okay, so yeah, the monster fights are exciting and fun. People like to use their abilities because in a lot of tabletop role-playing games, combat is kind of what the game is geared to. I mean, there's 100 pages of spells that deal damage in source book, so you want to be able to like do that. But keeping track of, okay, this monster has 230 hit points, they did boom and a critical and it's math and then subtraction, and I'm not really great at like super quick math, so sometimes it's just like, okay, that counts as one hit.
Oh, the bus is coming.
The bus, yeah, there's the bus right there.
No, I sacrificed Nick so that I could survive.
Yeah, that's why I just use the tally marks for that reason, just because I don't want to be like doing the long subtraction. I just want to abstract the amount of I'm abstract. I feel like I have like a middle ground between like what you're doing and then like fully doing the math of it. You know what I mean?
So Okay, so for both of you, and let's just keep things simple. Let's say that you're using D&D. Both of you seem to be kind of abstracting your math a little bit instead of going like, that's a dragon that has 200 hit points. You're going, it has 10 hits, it has 10 tally marks, whatever. So are each of those tally marks for you like actual, like when a tally mark gets marked off or erased or however you're keeping track of it, are they actually receiving damage, or is that an abstract thing like they're just closer to death, they're running out of luck? How do you view HP?
For monsters in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, which is what I run, because nobody lets me run anything else, I think of it for monsters as I think of it as like actual physical damage. For PCs, I usually don't. Like I'll depending on what the monster's actually doing to them, like what type of damage they're actually doing to the PC. I like for the monsters, like I rather like actually tell them like the physical damage that they're suffering. And that way, you can get like the bloodied condition, like from 4E or whatever, and then you're just like, oh, like kind of where they're at. And it is helpful because I don't know, like I usually am like they're scarred or they're bruised or they're tired, like winded or whatever. That's usually what I do. What about you, Daniel?
I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to take you back to
gather around, kids.
Middle school times.
Uh-oh.
Back when summer school was an actual threat. But I used to do some backyard wrestling. From the Hicks.
What was your wrestling name?
I didn't have one. We just beat each other up.
Oh man,
backyard.
the unnamed.
Did you guys make belts? We did that. We would make like wrestling
we didn't do belts. We literally just went to like the backyard or a big open room and just beat the crap out of each other.
Woo.
And let me tell you, at the end of that, sometimes you just couldn't get off the ground like you'd want to, but the limbs were exhausted. And I find HP to be kind of like that. Like, how long can you go before you're not dead, you're not completely wounded, but just how long can you fight before like your muscles stop responding, before you can't catch your breath? So 0 hit points doesn't mean you're dead, or doesn't mean that you're maimed. It just means you're not fighting back anymore. So this is the end. And for villains, sometimes 0 hit points is just, okay, this is when they're going to retreat, call off their minions, or try to like invoke the big bad plan. So in a way, it could be, I prefer if someone does like a really interesting attack to give a wound. Like a critical hit could harm them in some way, or rolling max damage could be another way to do it. But generally, I just assume that even if you're a paladin with a shield and you take like you're going to take most of the hits on your armor and not actually get physical wounds every time, but eventually you're going to not be able to raise that shield again. And that is what HP represents to me.
I have a question for you based on that, because this is this is an interesting idea. You're saying like and I agree, because I sometimes think about it this way too.
Yeah.
But like your armor is also absorbing these hits. But then what is armor class? That's a different discussion, right? And I feel like there are, and we can talk about this in the second half, but like there's definitely games where like you kind of like armor and HP are kind of tied in together, or because like hip protection and dexterity and like hip protection is connected to your constitution, which I guess is like, so like in 5e anyway. So I feel like in 5e, it is more like the windedness thing that you were talking about in the backyard again example you gave.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I find that really interesting, because it's like, it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, what is, and I think like, I think calling it hip protection feels better, because you're kind of like when you get to that 0, you're like, that next hit, you're gone. Like your arm is gone, your eye is gone, or your head is gone, or something,
Yeah, I mean, that's a question in of itself. Do you ever use, whether for PCs or GMs, do you ever use hit points to kind of denote a catastrophe, loss of some, body part or some ability?
I would say no, because if someone doesn't have a limb, you don't cut off their max hit point total.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
So
would
it
be
seems weird that losing a limb would cost more. Like maybe the loss of hit points is kind of what the loss of the limb would cause a loss of hit points, but I don't think that losing a limb would be like the reason why so many of your hit points would be gone.
I
Right,
definitely
yeah. Like if you're stabilized and you just happen to not have a limb, like that's fine. You don't need to reduce your HP for that. But if you like just got your leg bit off by a wolf, like that's probably a lot of damage that you just took.
Right. I should clarify. I wasn't saying like, you fell and so now you've lost a leg and you're 10 hit points less forever. I mean, like, let's say that,
Like a damage
wolf,
threshold.
Yeah, damage threshold. The wolf has critted on you twice in a row, and in the second crit, it did somehow 40 damage in one hit. Like, do you ever...
Well, now here I have to tell you another story.
Okay.
We were playing... God, Franco might have to, like, throw in some details here. But
that's why I mentioned.
Oh, this was Kato.
wolf.
So this was the Majestics games. This was way back when,
right?
In which we had a player, Kato, the Cerebratonic, who wandered off into the woods to investigate a sound at night while everyone was asleep. Got hit by a wolf, and I was like, "Yeah, they took you lose an arm." But he had been also being pulled apart. Like 2 had attacked him, 1 had his leg, 1 had his arm. The wolf critted, and I was like, okay, in this situation, that crit is going to be represented by the loss of your arm. So
was it his leg?
It was his leg, because he had like a peg leg later.
Yeah, it was like
he lost an arm and a leg because both were replaced. But the wolves must have pulled one off a piece.
Yeah, they quartered him, but in half.
Yeah,
half of them. They needed 2 more to quarter.
They half quartered.
Yeah.
So I've done it. I wouldn't say I would use it as a general rule, but like I was saying before, like
we were young.
When someone gets a crit, when someone does a lot of damage, then maybe you display that as okay, because they did so much damage, we're going to represent that as a loss of a limb or like a grievous wound that will stay with you.
I have a system that I've been working on for this type of thing. It is,
but no one's ever going to let you play it.
No, nobody's ever going to let me play it. But it's when you take so there's a lot of like critical damage tables that people have created. One of them is Emmy Allen's Death and Dismemberment table, very good. And I was kind of like adapting that, and basically like when you hit 0 hit points, depending on the type of damage you take, like you suffer like a horrible injury or something like that.
Yeah.
Like if the damage that brought you to 0 was slashing damage, then you might lose a leg or an arm or something like that. Or depending on whatever the role is, like you just are, you just can't use it for a while. You just have to drag yourself off. If it's like caustic damage or something, then like your lungs are burned, or if you have head, like, I don't know, like you suffer some deficit to your ability scores, basically based on like the types of damage that you might take, or, you lose a limb or something like that.
If you get bludgeoning damage, it's a concussion, and now you have disadvantage on perception checks or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And I think like something like that is, it kind of makes, cause like dropping to 0 hit points and dying outright is not fun. But dropping to 0 hit points and then like rolling a d20 3 times to see if you come back up is also pretty boring. Like, like, and I think Danny, you've talked about this on a separate episode about like different rules that you've used, and you're even doing that right now in the current
we're
game that you're running.
experimenting with a new system called staggered instead of unconscious.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, it's like when you like fold in these other ways of like, how do you deal with dropping to 0 hit points? I think it gets more interesting than just like the death saving throws, which are I think very like probably the most boring thing, because like not only are you not playing, but you're also like you're not in the game, but then you're also kind of just like, well, when they come back up, like I have to like rest for D4 hours. And then I'm fine, I guess. And it just doesn't feel like it's a real consequence to dropping to 0. And it makes combat more something that you get into all the time, which is like
Now,
what 5e wants.
I will say that when I watched Dimension 20, they make those death saves dramatic and interesting.
Yeah,
they're
in
professionals.
a combat round. Yeah, they're professional. So I'm just saying, like, it's possible to do, but I think a lot of maybe the problem in certain groups is when you have 6 or 7 players and you're the one person that's down making death saves. You wait about 45 minutes for your turn to come around, and all you can do is D20 to see if it goes one way or another. That's boring, but I think if you're playing with like 3 or 4 people and that's coming around a lot faster, that makes it more exciting. So it kind of like, depending on group size, is also how you have to handle hit points and coming to 0.
But I think like the lingering consequences thing, I think does make dropping to 0 less of a thing that you want to happen.
Right.
I feel like sometimes, players will just run headlong into situations. Basically.
Right, because a long rest fixes it. So,
yeah. The
What do you
greatest
think, Shade?
myth of every TTRPG, the long rest. So for me, I try very hard for hit points to be a real, like, this person got hit, they have suffered this much damage. I like the idea, generally speaking, in a lot of systems, even 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons does say like something to the effect of like it's a combination. HP is a combination of your physical prowess and your luck, or something like that. And that's lovely. I like the idea that, I'm just getting more and more unlucky. But I also think about the fact that that's just kind of nonsense. The more someone waves a sword at me, of course I'm going to get hit at some point, and I will probably die. But
probably the sword's point.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. No. Anyway, I try very hard for hit points to be that representation, and in parts there are classes, and it's not just limited to D&D. There are playbooks, things like that, where high HP is like a core thing in that particular class. Like, I can't imagine playing a barbarian with low HP. It is so central to that class. And so I want it to matter. I want it to be, you're taking all of these hits and glancing blows, you're just getting battered, but you're just plowing through. I really enjoy that. As far as a GM perspective, I definitely abstract the hit points a little bit more for monsters here and there. It really just kind of depends on what kind of fight I'm going for. But more often than not, I will start us off with the full, this thing has 300 hit points.
You bring up a point, and I might be going off topic a little, and I might be going off topic a little bit, but I want to ask the question. So you were saying in some games, the high hit point total is part of it, getting up to 300. Like, I'm playing a game right now where I currently have 740 hit points.
I'm sorry. Whoa. What game is this?
As a player? As a character?
Horizon. So not an official like tabletop game, but like
a video game.
It's a game where you have hit points, and again, I've gone up to 740. So it's like I will probably rarely ever die. But then there's certain games, and Shade, you probably know a lot about this, but Magic the Gathering, where you always have 20 hit points.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, you start with 20.
Yeah, you start. Yeah.
That is the game.
Yeah.
Are there like examples? Like, because that is very interesting that everyone knows they always have 20. You can always take 20 points of damage. And the ways that you modify and deal with that fact can be interesting too. And I don't know many like role-playing games where you have your character has this many hit points.
Oh, any Franco's got it, but go ahead.
Well,
Franco.
I would say that, Daniel, is a great segue to the next set of topics that we have. But first, Nick is gonna send us a message from Remedial School and tell us about the advertisers that we have this week.
Thank you, advertisers. Clap.
Jesus. It's like a bass drop. Let me clap, and then we're back. Ready?
Do we do another one now?
Now we clap to come back in.
Yeah. Well, we don't do this as well. Not in the same room.
Yeah, no, it's great. Hey, and we're back. Thanks, Nick, for that remedial message from Remedial School. So Shade, you were about to say in response to Daniel's very good question.
Yeah, which the question was, dear listener, what TTRPGs have it where your hit points are just sets, which is to say every player character, and unless I'm mistaken here, Daniel, every player character has like 20 hit points, and that's just the way it is. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Any PBTA game pretty much starts you off exactly like that.
Almost all of them, I think.
Almost all of them. Yeah, I shouldn't generalize, but like... there's this one, I don't think we've really talked about it very much. I think Nick might enjoy it if you gave it a try. Monster of the Week. I've
never heard him mention that game.
Yeah. I'm surprised he's never played it.
Couldn't say.
So Monster of the Week, though, specifically, everyone, you can't get more hit points in that game.
Nope.
You have exactly that many. That's however many, I think it's like 7. Yeah.
Yep.
And
it's like 4. You have like 4 normal hit points, and then there's a bar, and then there's 3 more hit points, and you're like, I really don't want to get down there.
Yeah, because those 3 are like you're dying. Like actual things are happening where you're dying.
Yeah.
So that's one where it's just a set standard. But still, even in those games, there are so many ways to mitigate the damage,
like armor,
and
there it is again.
Or other abilities that I really want a hit to be a hit. I think PBTA does that very well, where because you're always getting hit, essentially anytime you make an attack at something, you're being attacked. And you don't have an AC, you're just taking less harm, right? I think that's one of the better... It's honestly one of my favorite HPs, just because it's so elegant in the, you're going to take 2 harm. Oh, you have 1 armor? Cool, you took 1 harm. And that feels so real.
That's math even Nick can do.
But I actually love that you brought up Monster of the Week, because I just started a Monster of the Week television series called Teen Wolf.
Oh God, how is it?
And in the first episode, spoilers if you haven't seen a 10-year-old TV series, 2006, I think it started.
Jeez Louise.
I don't quote me on this, people. I just started it. But yeah, he takes one of the characters takes a crossbow bolt through the arm, and immediately, like, the fight goes out of them, which I think is fair. If you have 7 hit points total, to lose 1 harm to a crossbow bolt with no armor on.
Yeah, that bolt did 4 harm, and he's now unstable.
Yeah, when your archer in 5e is like shooting a monster, and it's like, you hit him, and it's like, but like kind of, or like it went through his shoulder, and so like it only did like 8 damage, and this is like a 200 HP monster, so it's like that's the weird.
It's like your first 5 hits have to like graze the monster before they actually start landing, or it doesn't make any sense if you think about it in depth.
And I think that's what's cool about monsters, is that they're monstrous, right?
Yeah.
It's like a troll taking an arrow and just being like, I'm chill, like it's whatever. Like taking an arrow like a guard would or something,
Yeah.
It's like totally different.
But it's so tricky because I mean, again, that's why I want HP to really, really matter. As far as like, yes, that hit is a hit, it dealt damage. Because I love the idea of my fighter not just having arrows in his shield, but also having arrows in his body, and he is just fucking he keeps going. That is such a wonderful, evocative image. But so often at the table, it's just like, okay, I took 5 hit damage. Okay, cool. And that's it. Like, you're not...
Yeah.
There needs to be a descriptive nature to it. And I do think that games with smaller hit pools do that.
Yeah. if we could shift to a related topic,
Yeah.
there's something that's kind of like this that I've seen people talk about, like in the OSR circles, flesh versus grit. So grit being like the hit protection that we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that in some systems that people have kind of come up with, like the grit will go up normally, like if your hit die is a D8, you get a D8 every level or whatever, and that's your grit.
Yeah.
Your flesh goes up 1 every level.
Okay.
And that flesh is sort of like that, that monster of the week beyond the bar, like 3 HP or whatever. And those are like, if you take a flesh hit, like you're taking that wound, you're taking that arrow to the quadricep, or you're taking like a cut across the eye or something like that.
So it's like a sword fight through the grit, and then that flesh wound is when it goes through.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so because of that, some of these systems are also able to bypass grit. So like if you're, if you take like poison damage, if you swallow like a bunch of poison or something like that, that's not going to hit your grit. That's going to hit your flesh.
Yeah.
If you walk into a pool of lava, you instantly die, because what the hell are we doing here?
That makes sense.
Shouldn't even be standing near lava. It's the fumes that get you.
I've died every time I've gone into lava.
That's right.
It's the fumes. That's true. Yeah. And so I think those systems can be very interesting. There are some related ones that kind of, instead of using flesh, because like keeping track of 2 pools of hit points for players. And then these systems, like you never do it for monsters. Like monsters are just bags of hit points. Like it's whatever.
Yeah.
But like in other systems, the flesh, quote unquote, will be like your strength score or your constitution score or something like that. And then games like Cairn, which is a hack of Into the Odd, and there's like a whole family of games that are odd hacks. But Cairn will like when you go beyond your hit points, you start taking strength damage, and then every time you take strength damage, you have to like make a save, basically. And when you go to 0 strength, you are dead. And another thing with that game too is that there is no rolling to hit, so you're always taking damage. So fighting is always a risk.
Yeah, and that's very PBTA of it as well. Like that's so you said taking kind of like a dip in your strength. That is something that for D&D 5th edition and D&D 1, whatever, the exhaustion. I am a huge fan of exhaustion in general. I think that that's a really fun system. I think that it's getting a little bit better with
let's fight about it.
Let's do. I just think that it's an underutilized system is my problem.
Yeah.
And I think it should be married to HP a lot more.
Yeah, I find exhaustion works great as you get 6 points of exhaustion and then you die.
Yeah.
You've been worn out completely. There's not really sort of hit points. It's not hits. It's just like you can do this much and then you're dead.
Yeah.
What I don't like with exhaustion, since I think we're talking about the 5e, is how it kind of just arbitrarily takes random things away from you up until you hit that point. And I don't like that. Personally, if I had it my way, if I could rewrite the world.
Sure.
The first
which
2
you
points
can,
of exhaustion,
Daniel.
I could.
You
Homebrew
can.
exhaustion rules.
I'm doing it. I'm making a game. Everyone can make their own games. I empower you all.
That's
now that you have Franco's permission, go and make the games.
Tell us about your exhaustion rules.
Here's what I would do. 6 points of exhaustion. Keep it but the first 2 points shouldn't take anything away from your character's ability to function. It's just like 2 points of exhaustion, 3 points. Now you lose disadvantage on anything that you have to roll for. 4 points. Now your speed is half because now it's starting to wear down on you. And I don't know what the other ones are. We never really get that far before everyone's just like, I got 2 points of exhaustion. I'm taking a long rest and fixing it. But yeah, I do see what you're saying though, because like exhaustion as a concept, I really like.
Yeah.
But as the mechanics as presented, I find it just sort of nickels and dimes
in 5e.
In 5e, it nickels and dimes characters in weird ways that makes playing I don't think it makes it more difficult than it needs to be for just having 2 points of something that's like you're in the cold for too long. Yeah, I get it. But why is everything you do half effective? I don't like that.
So I am with you. I definitely get those points. I think that, you know, if we continue with the D&D system and go into one D&D as players, they are making some improvements on that. It's a little more streamlined, which is nice. But for 5th edition, I generally I like the idea that at exhaustion level 1, disadvantage on ability checks. That makes some good sense to me, because when people get sleepy, they just get sloppy at the things that they're doing. It happens. I would change. I think speed halved should be number 3, and disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws should be number 2. That's the way that I would switch that personally.
Here's how I'll change it.
I get it as what you're saying is like, yeah, if you're sleepy, you make mistakes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, blah, blah, blah. I respect your opinion as a person. But what
I felt it.
What I feel is you start taking things away from the player's agency to play the game, then you're cutting into the fun away. I don't know.
It's just disadvantage.
I think, yeah. So here's what giving them no consequence. So what is exhaustion, right? And this is a whole different topic now.
Well, it is a different topic, but it's not, because it's tied into HP, right?
Because Nick's not here to police us. We can talk about whatever we want. This is a random podcast.
ANAB, all Nicks are bastards.
Yeah.
We just lost 1,000 viewers.
Oh no, all the Nicks.
I think that the situation wherein you get exhausted should be a choice that the player makes, so they have the agency, to decide to not get exhausted. Don't push yourself, and that's why I think 6 levels is too many. How often have you gotten to 4 or 5 levels
in real life or in the game?
Both.
Oh, I've gotten there in real life.
Combine the numbers though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's too many, because there's no situation where I'm going to get to, sorry, I keep holding a sneeze back. I think it should be 4 levels of exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
And the first level is you just get disadvantage on everything. Attack rolls too. I think it's very milquetoast that 5e is just ability checks. I'm when am I going to do ability checks? How often am I doing ability checks? And then the second level,
and
nah,
that's an ability check,
right? But but it should be also attack rolls.
No, I do agree. Yeah.
The second one would probably be something like the same thing, and then your speed is halved, and then the last one is you are just fucking miserable or something. I don't know. And then the fourth one is you're dead.
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna
maybe it's just 3.
First point of exhaustion, you're more susceptible to being charmed and frightened. The mental saves disadvantage, because that's what happens when you're first exhausted, right? Your mind
is too fiddly.
You can still. All I'm saying, I don't like it.
Sure.
Players need options. I'm here for the players, gentlemen. We got to play the game. We got to get in there.
I think I always like to present the player with the consequence before. It's hey, you can keep going, but you're going to take a point of exhaustion. And you know what that means? Because I've already told you ahead of time. And I'm going to tell you again. You're going to take disadvantage on every check. Oh, I remember. It was going to be hit points. You lose half your max hit points or something like that. Sure. Something crazy. It's just so
well, that makes sense. I jive with that, because obviously exhaustion and hit points are both your ability to keep going. So if you hit exhaustion a certain level,
you become vulnerable to damage.
That, just to remind you, that is actually one of the exhaustion statuses. I think it's either number 4 or number 5.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah, it
should be number 3
in 5th edition. I am pulling it up because
we never get past 3 in any game I've ever played. So I don't know what 4, 5, and 6 are, other than 6 being death.
It's number 4. Your hit point maximum is halved, and your speed is reduced to 0 at 5.
Yeah, as well it should be.
Yeah.
You know, if you're that exhausted. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's fine because like it's not, it's like you're taking away options from the player, but like that's the consequence of the actions that they've taken, right? Like if you drop if you spring a trap on a player, or like like if you drop a character in a cage after they jump down into a well, like you haven't taken away my option. You've presented me with a new set of questions that I'm excited to tackle. It's just like, great, I'm in a cage, how am I going to break out? Which was very fun for me. I liked that I'm just referring to the last game that Daniel put me in, where I got to make some very fun choices, and I loved all of them.
Good. I'm glad.
I stole a guy's horse, and then I left that horse to let my friends get away, sacrificing myself.
It was pretty badass.
Yeah.
But no, I think we're all on the same page that maybe 5th edition's exhaustion rules could be refined, but back to getting out of exhaustion corner. I've just rather like the way that hit points and exhaustion, I think that they should be tied together a little bit more in general. Yeah. And other than just like your HP is halved, which is fine. But yeah.
To riff off that, it kind of sounds like exhaustion could be what hit points are.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even need to marry them. Exhaustion could just be how you decide how close your character's to death. Like you were talking about the PBTA stuff, being like wounded and harmed.
Like Blades in the Dark, I think.
Yeah.
I had put on here. Like the injuries are like just in little boxes or something like that. Like it's like I pulled it up somewhere, but it doesn't matter. It's basically like 4 levels of damage, right? Like where you're like, oh, I'm taking like some superficial harm, and then like real wounds, and then like deadly wounds or something like that.
And to bring this back to another like fun game that I saw on the internet, it's called Monster Menu, I think.
Monster
But they take HP and abstract it into calories and hydration.
Okay.
So the more you do in the dungeon, the more you fight, the more hurt you get, the more like calories and water you lose. And so you got to look for sources to eat and drink while you're running around this dungeon.
Just like Zelda.
Just like Zelda. Or if you've ever played a game called Dark Cloud for the PS3, I think it was.
I don't know that game.
Or the PS2. But yeah, you had to you constantly were getting hungry and thirsty in the dungeons where you had to go back to town. So I think, where HP is a lot, I really like when HP is abstracted into your like other ways to survive that kind of makes sense. And then again, we just played Franco and Jackie was the Thirsty Swords Lesbians game where your hit points were your emotional state of mind, and you could take 5 hits of damage, but those were like, are you frightened? Are you guilty? Are you angry?
So like the conditions would accumulate. Yeah.
Your conditions accumulated until you were defeated. But in that game, you don't die because it's not violent or as violent as other games. You're just taken out of the scene and you can come back in the next one, which is also fun because, who wants to lose a character every time they hit 0 hit points?
Yeah.
I know Shay does. Our Dark Souls daddy.
Dark Souls daddy.
I'm just saying it's okay if your characters die. And
it is
I
okay.
also am 100% okay if your character comes back, because in the fucking fantasy that does D&D or any other TTRPG you're playing, guess what? Death ain't the fucking end. Like that's
Gandalf.
Thank you, 1990 Superman, for making that a thing that's not real anymore.
Gandalf, who's that? I'm Gandalf the White. Huh?
Yes. They did call
That's
me
a
that.
name I haven't heard in a while.
Oh, our Sherlock Holmes, the first person voted back to life by popular demand.
Oh my god,
it's true.
Too funny.
Well, no.
Did we talk about that?
I'm not going to say it. No, I don't think we've really talked too much about Sherlock Holmes being voted back to life by fans.
I feel like we talked about that maybe off mic.
I'm sure we have off mic, because we are an echo chamber of friends.
That's true.
Conan got annoyed to death to bring a character back.
I love that. Like the BBC Sherlock series, when they brought him back, like the next season or whatever, like they had no explanation for it. and they were basically just like making fun of people in the first episode back. They were just like making fun of the fans for trying to come up with theories by ridiculing all the characters who were also speculating on the theories, and it's like, that's rude.
Yeah, but it was I we're so off topic, but I did enjoy that a bit. It's a shame the series kind of just slowly went downhill after that, or very quickly.
Yeah. So that's HP. In Sherlock Holmes's world, it's how many fans will write in.
You get 2 hit points in in Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is not TTRPG adjacent, but it's worth. We kind of already touched upon this a little bit. I think most people's initial interaction with hit points is video games, right?
Sure.
In this day and age, because they're just so easy and accessible. And it just seems like TTRPGs come later in a lot of people's lives. What video game has the best hit point system?
Zelda, easily.
Yeah?
Easy answer.
Yeah. The definitely way that it's represented on the screen, and the way that you get more of it by finding little crystal glasses of heart power.
I love that the hit points are so hard won in that game.
Yeah.
I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom right now and only doing that. I actually took a trip recently, and I purposely did not bring my Nintendo Switch, so I was present for my friends.
Smart.
And it worked, although I was just, I was like twitching, like my hands were twitching, ready to play on the controller. But yeah, like you have to do so many things just to get the HP, whereas like in other games you can just like swing until you level up and get an arbitrary amount of hit points based on something, algorithms, whatever. I don't know. I think this, I like a video game where, like, I'll play any kind of video game, but like I like more when video games are more transparent about like the abilities and like how they advance and stuff like that.
Right.
Like where you're like, okay, what are really the stats that your characters have? And I think like the simpler, the better.
Yeah.
And HP is one of those stats that I think should be simple. I don't know. I like it to be transparent. I think I like my TTRPGs that way too.
I like it when it's abstract. Like I enjoyed the games that I've played where you don't have a life bar. Just the more you get hit, the more like the screen goes fuzzy and like starts to go red. And you're like, oh, I got to get away from this for a second until I can recover. That just goes back into our tabletop stuff I was talking about. Yeah, I kind of just like abstract hit point totals that let you play more with a story in mind than hard and fast numbers.
Nah, I like to know. Ooh, Hollow Knight does that too. Man, Hollow Knight. That game is hard. / I'm bad at it.
All right. Well, does anyone have any comments or thoughts they want to close out on?
Well, yeah, I was gonna.
I have a couple of games I also want to bring up. That
I was gonna say we should talk about our favorite TTRPG hit points, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, I wouldn't call this my favorite, but I think it's a very interesting system. Knave, which has its 2nd edition coming out now, and is on Kickstarter. I highly recommend it. It's a great game. And it was funded in like 6 hours or something like that.
Hell yeah.
It's a really good intro to the OSR if people are interested in that. And Mouse Ritter, which takes this from Knave. So inventory slots, they use like a slot-based inventory rather than like an encumbrance-based mathy one that Nick would love. And every time you take an injury, you like beyond your hit protection, when you take an injury, it takes up an inventory slot, so you can carry less stuff. And the stuff includes like spells and other things like that too, and your armor and stuff like that. So you just start dropping shit as you're like too hurt to hold on to anything. It's a little abstract, but it kind of plays that role of like just filling up with injuries, and then when you have all of your slots filled up, you are dead.
Yeah, I like that. How about you, Daniel? Any favorite TTRPG hit point systems?
I've only played with the actual numerical values. Other than Thirsty Sword Lesbians, I've only played D&D. And I gotta say, I kind of like the hit points in a sense of like I like having big numbers, but I also like I like hit P exactly as it stands. Running, I like to do more fun things with it, to think about it and visualize it.
I like a hit point when you can hold on to it for dear life. Soulborn, I have it listed here because we recently played that with Snyder's Return.
Go check them out. Friend of the podcast, Snyder's Return.
Yeah, like I think the scar system, I kind of forget what it was, but I wrote it down. Do you guys remember that?
So
I remember so little about the rules for that game.
I love
it. Was a lot of fun to play. Yeah,
it's really good. Yeah.
So the way that game worked is there was a vitality system that was based on essentially your dice pools and +1 modifiers and things like that. But additionally, there was a scar system wherein if you took a certain amount of damage, I think you got a scar, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Okay.
Which I thought was neat.
What about you, Shade? What's your favorite damage system?
Honestly, I do love PBTA damage systems just because they are just so elegant. And I mean, and again, they also feel a lot more real to me. I also am just a fan of big hit pools for basic like D&D, Pathfinder, things like that. Those are fun to me. But if I want something that's streamlined and feels simultaneously crunchy while also not being crunchy at all, a PBTA's hit point system is my favorite by far.
Yeah, I think now I just want to talk about crunch versus non-crunch.
I mean, we've got a little more time. I think that's valid to say just real quick for HP.
For HP, I think it's like, I think that is one of the stats that I like to be crunchy, right? Like I think there's like, it's or maybe I don't like, I think like constitution score or strength score as like a modifier for it, I feel like is kind of like, it just depends on what your game wants to do with like what hit protection represents.
Yeah.
And if your hit protection is a combination of luck and your grittiness, then I feel like it should just be just the roll of the die rather than, tied to any stat. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And the opinion is also in the game I'm developing.
There you go.
It's just a D8. Hold on to it for dear life.
Anything else, guys?
I think that's it.
All right.
Let's it looks like the bus is about to reach our stop, or let's go out to the curb and wait for Nick to get back from school.
While we do that, just thank you all very much for listening. Tabletop is a proud member of the Helios Network, which is a wonderful network with real people who make podcasts for real people like you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Goodbye.
What are you still doing here? Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay, Nick, come on down.